40,000 years ago, if you walked the coast of what is now Indonesia, you might have passed something you recognized. Upright, tool-using, eyes that watched back, but shorter than you, heavier through the chest, a face that didn't quite match the face you expected. Not an animal, not a monster. Something that looked back at you the way you looked at it, with recognition, maybe with fear. This was not your ancestor. This was your neighbor. And then, one day, not a dramatic day, not a day anyone noticed they were gone. Today, we use the word human as if it describes one thing. It doesn't. Or rather, it didn't. For most of the last 2 million years, being human was a family argument, multiple branches, multiple answers to the same problem, all of them breathing, hunting, grieving, surviving. One by one, those branches ended, and we are what's left. Which raises a question that should feel stranger than it does. Why us? Not the strongest, not the oldest, not even the smartest, if we're being precise about it. Just the last. And the closer you look at how that happened, the less it looks like a victory. Homo erectus is where you have to start, because Homo erectus was not a failure. If anything, they set a standard none of us have come close to matching. They appeared around 2 million years ago, long-legged and upright, built for walking open land. They spread out of Africa earlier than any human species before them, pushed into Asia, and adapted to environments separated by thousands of kilometers. They made tools. They hunted. They survived ice ages, shifting climates, and the slow rearrangement of continents. And they lasted. Not for 1,000 years, not for 50,000. For well over 1 million years, Homo erectus existed on this planet. The last known fossils come from Ngandong on the island of Java, dated between 117,000 and 108,000 years ago. By comparison, Homo sapiens has existed for roughly 300,000 years. We haven't even been here a third as long. If Homo erectus could vanish after 1 million years of survival, what exactly are we so confident about? What ended them is still not fully known. Their remaining populations likely became fragmented. Climate shifted fast enough that their habitats, forests, rivers, the animals they depended on changed faster than they could follow. And by the time other human species were moving through the same regions, Homo erectus may have already been reduced to small, scattered groups. Small populations are fragile in ways that large ones aren't. One bad winter, one disease. The birth rate fractionally too low for a few generations. You don't need a catastrophe to end a species. You just need time and the wrong circumstances, stacked in the wrong order. The Neanderthals are harder to summarize because most of what people think they know about them is wrong. The brutish cave dwellers, the half-humans grunting in the dark. That image was invented, not discovered, and the actual evidence points somewhere more unsettling. Neanderthals were people. Their skeletons carry injuries consistent with close-range hunting of large animals, the kind of damage you find in rodeo riders, people who work within arm's reach of things that can kill them. They used fire, made complex tools, and likely cared for injured members of their groups. Some sites suggest they used pigments. Some suggest burials. They survived in one of the harshest environments any human species has ever faced, and they did it for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, around 65,000 years ago, something happened to them before Homo sapiens ever became a serious factor in their world. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, using ancient DNA from Neanderthal remains across Europe, including a fetus recovered from a cave in southern Germany, bones so small and fragile they sat unnoticed in a museum collection for decades, confirmed that Neanderthal populations experienced a severe genetic bottleneck around that time. Their range collapsed back to a small refuge in southwestern France. The cold had pushed them there. When the ice receded, and they spread out again, they were genetically almost identical, all effectively cousins, descended from the same handful of survivors. The diversity that had once stretched across Eurasia was gone. Genetically speaking, the late Neanderthals were a very homogeneous group, the researchers concluded. They rebounded in numbers, but the genetic resilience never came back. And between 45,000 and 42,000 years ago, the population collapsed for the last time. By then, Homo sapiens were entering the same territories. The question of whether we caused their extinction, contributed to it, or simply arrived as they were already unraveling may never have a clean answer. Probably all three are true, in different places, at different times. But the picture that emerges is not of a war. It's of a species that had already been through one catastrophic near death, that was living in small, isolated groups with thinning genetic diversity, that then faced climate shifts, competition for prey, and the arrival of another human species with wider networks and faster-spreading ideas. Neanderthals didn't lose one battle. They lost 1,000 small ones, spread across 20,000 years. The Denisovans are different from all the others, and the reason is strange. Until recently, we knew them almost entirely as an absence, a ghost in other people's DNA. A finger bone from a Siberian cave in 2010 held genetic sequences that matched neither Neanderthal nor Homo sapiens. Something else. Something new. For years, that was most of what we had. A finger bone, a few teeth, fragments so small they seemed insufficient to carry the weight of an entire human species. And yet, their genetic shadow was enormous. People in Papua New Guinea carried Denisovan ancestry. So do populations across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Tibetans inherited a gene variant from Denisovan-related humans that helps their bodies process oxygen at altitude. One of the strangest facts in all of human evolution. A vanished people still help the living breathe. But in 2025, the ghost acquired a face. A massive skull recovered decades earlier from northeastern China, catalogued, studied, sitting in a museum under a different name, was confirmed through DNA extracted from hardened dental plaque. This was a Denisovan, the Harbin cranium, the most complete Denisovan individual ever found. And around the same time, a jawbone pulled from the seafloor of the Taiwan Strait was identified through protein analysis as belonging to a male Denisovan. Suddenly, the picture changed. These were not thin, scattered ghosts living only in caves at the edge of the world. Their range stretched from the cold of Siberia to the Tibetan Plateau, to tropical Laos, a child's tooth found in a cave called Cobra Cave, to the warm, shallow waters off Taiwan. A geographic spread larger than Neanderthals ever achieved, and still they vanished. We don't fully know why. Their populations may have been widely distributed, but thin everywhere, too spread to maintain enough genetic exchange. Homo sapiens moved through their territories and absorbed some, outnumbering others. The youngest confirmed Denisovan remains are around 40,000 to 30,000 years old. After that, nothing but the DNA they left inside us. And then there is Homo floresiensis, the strangest one. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, scientists in 2003 uncovered the bones of a human species that stood barely a meter tall, with a brain smaller than most chimpanzees, yet made stone tools and survived in a landscape occupied by Komodo dragons and pygmy elephants the size of buffalo. Islands do strange things to evolution. Large animals shrink, small animals grow, everything recalibrates to what the island can support. Homo floresiensis likely descended from a population of earlier humans that reached Flores hundreds of thousands of years ago and became something entirely different, something that worked. They lived in that cave, Liang Bua, for at least 140,000 years. A study published in December 2025 finally gave the clearest answer yet to what ended them. A prolonged drought, beginning around 76,000 years ago, reaching its worst between 61,000 and 55,000 years ago, reduced summer rainfall at Liang Bua to roughly half of modern levels. The researchers reconstructed this from chemical records in cave stalagmites and isotopic data from the fossil teeth of Stegodon, the pygmy elephant Homo floresiensis hunted. Those animals depended on river water. When the rivers went seasonally dry, the Stegodon populations collapsed. The hobbit's primary food source was gone. A volcanic eruption around 50,000 years ago buried parts of the island in ash. And Homo sapiens, by the genetic and archaeological evidence, were already island hopping through Indonesia by then. Whether the two species ever crossed paths is unknown. But Homo floresiensis had survived Komodo dragons, had survived thousands of years of island isolation. What they could not survive was a drought that lasted longer than many civilizations have existed, compounding into an ecological collapse that left them nowhere to go. Here is the part of the story no one usually tells. Around 50,000 years ago, precisely the period when Neanderthals and Denisovans were collapsing, recent analysis of modern human genomes reveals that Homo sapiens, outside of Africa, had been reduced to somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 breeding individuals. Not the total population, the number of people actually reproducing, a low so severe, the genetic signature of it is still readable in our DNA today. Whatever caused it, climate, disease, habitat loss, the same forces erasing every other human species at the time Homo sapiens was not exempt. We went through our own version of what we watched happen to everyone else. The difference, if there was one, may have been that our groups, though small, were still connected in ways that Neanderthal groups were not. If one band failed, knowledge could survive in another. If one region became uninhabitable, people could move and be absorbed elsewhere. A 2025 study published in Nature found that Homo sapiens had already developed the capacity to survive in extreme environments, dense rainforests, arid deserts, cold grasslands before the major dispersal out of Africa. Not just biologically, culturally. Ideas about how to find water in a dry landscape, how to track prey through unfamiliar terrain, and how to build tools from local materials. These ideas could travel across networks that no other human species seems to have maintained at the same scale. It wasn't that we were smarter as individuals. It was that our individual knowledge didn't stay individual. So what are we then? We are not the endpoint of a progression. Homo erectus lasted longer. Neanderthals were physically better suited to the Ice Age world than we are. Denisovans ranged across half the planet. Homo floresiensis survived on a predator-filled island for 140,000 years. Each of them was a real answer to the question of what a human being could be. Each answer worked, until it didn't. We carry pieces of some of them inside us Neanderthal DNA in most people outside of sub-Saharan Africa, Denisovan DNA across Southeast Asia and the Pacific, traces of others we haven't yet named. In that sense, they didn't entirely vanish. But, as living, breathing, independent people, they're gone. What's left is us. One branch on a tree that used to have many. We came close, closer than most people know, to being just another branch that ended. The word human used to mean something plural. Now it means us. And only us. And it's worth asking whether that's a triumph or just a kind of loneliness. The last human species is still here. The word last can mean two things.